Welcome back. This weekend, we are in the second part of a conversation that I was having with Pastor Tom, the founding pastor of our church. If you were not with us last weekend, I would encourage you to go back to our website or to our YouTube channel to get the first installment of this conversation where we talked with Pastor Tom about how Church on the Rock began, God's call on his life, and some of the ways that he was following the will of the Lord in his life to respond in obedience and take steps toward launching Church on the Rock. Today, we're going to shift into a little bit of a different focus of this conversation, and we're going to talk about Pastor Tom's incredible ability to see potential in the next generation and the way that he would invest into us. And I do say us because I was one of them. He would pour into us, give us opportunities to be taught, and give us opportunities to use our giftings. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about that with him and how we can learn from that, because as you know, a part of the Move discipleship journey at Church on the Rock is that God is calling us to pour into the next generation. And so we want to replicate as a church in this season what Pastor Tom modeled for us in a former season so that the church will outlive us all. And so without further ado, let's dive back in. Okay, PT. For everybody out there, it's another week. For you and me, we just finished the other conversation. But I want to shift gears now and talk a little bit about, as our church in this discipleship journey, God is calling us. He made it very, very evident and clear to us to create this emphasis on the next generation. And so a lot of the things that we've done and have been doing has been pointing toward raising up the next generation of leaders for the church. We don't want to, our goal, I think as Christian parents, is not to raise productive members of society, but like Christ-centered disciples of Jesus, because that is productive. And so what I know is the history. I've been around, again, as we said in the last conversation, I've been around you most of my life, been around Church on the Rock for, since 1999. I was 16 when I started attending. And so what I got to experience as a kid, under your leadership in two different kind of eras, I got to see the way that, your passion for children, specifically when you were a kids' church pastor. And you could talk as much or as little about that as you want to. And then seeing you as the lead pastor of our church and being, I guess, a beneficiary might be the right word, of your investment into people like me, your son, Derek, who's a part of our board of trustees, been a part of our church since the beginning. Jeremy Dowler, who's our worship director now, was a part of that with us for many of those early years. And then many other names that a lot of our church wouldn't know, but many other names of people that are actively serving the Lord, actively engaged in churches all across the country. Many of them are on church staffs. This is their life, their calling. And so I would love to get into your story. And again, you can start wherever you want to, but you were a children's church pastor for a season, and then God transitioned you into the role of a lead pastor, and then I saw you continue to just see the next generation. So anywhere you want to begin, talk to us about how it began for you, your heart and eye for kids, I guess.
It all started for me as a children's church pastor. I was at a small church, the beginnings of a small church, which is a very large church now in St. Augustine. But anyway, the pastor came to me and said, "I want you to be the children's church pastor." And I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." So he gave me some guidelines and put me upstairs in a little tiny room with a bunch of kids, and it all started right there. Mm-hmm. So we started our children's church ministry out of not calling from God, but an appointment from a pastor, and which that's pretty good. That's a pretty significant thing to say, because a lot of times people will not feel like they're supposed to be in a ministry, and the pastor may ask, or our door may open for them, and they not feel like they need to be, that's not their calling. But in the midst of action, God can call you into what he has for you.
Yes.
So I always say it like this: participation will absolutely generate presence. So if I'm participating in a service, I'm participating in a ministry, his presence can come. But if I'm just kicking back and not doing anything, his presence, his leading, his guiding cannot lead, guide, direct me.
Yes, I've heard it said like this, that his presence goes where it's wanted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like a car, if you
I was thinking the same analogy. Go with that. Yeah.
you got a car and someone's pushing, the car won't crank, but the power steering's not working. But if you start that car rolling, you can actually turn that steering wheel a lot easier. God can move us if we're willing to roll with Him. He can turn us
easier
and
to
move us
steer.
and direct us in the right position. So it all started from an appointment, not a calling.
Okay.
And then one thing led to another, and we built a big church, a nice church. We were averaging
A building.
the church that
Right.
you first attended,
Right.
with your mom and dad,
Yeah.
and Amos.
And Amos.
I'll never forget Amos. And
That's
Josh.
that's one of my cousins on my mom's
That's
side.
his
Yeah.
cousin. Anyway, so when we built that, I built a 2-story puppet stage. I mean, we had characters. It was awesome.
It was awesome.
It was awesome.
The whole Western theme.
My son Tommy was a part of that.
So cool.
He was always Gospel Dog. I don't know if you remember Gospel
I
Dog.
do. Yeah.
then-
I would not have remembered till you said that. Yeah.
But anyway, we averaged, the last year that we were at that church, we averaged 120 kids per service.
Incredible.
Average 120. And then, of course, when something happened and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But when I saw you and Amos, be honest with you guys, listen.
Yes, please be honest.
When I had like 12 workers working for me, 10 or 12 workers who would work in the service to keep kids in order to somewhat, Of course, the quiet seat prize was always something that the kids wanted, but you never got it.
Never won that.
You never even got close. But and I would see you and Amos come in the back door, and I would pull 2 or 3 of them over. I'd say, those 2 guys here, you really need to watch. Stay with them. Kind of hang real close to them. Yeah. But anyway. But during that time, y'all don't know how old you were at that time. You had to be little.
Little.
Because children's church was 6 to 12.
Yeah.
So you had to be somewhere in that 8-year-old, 9-year-old.
Yeah, I would say I was single digit age in that.
Probably
time.
8 to 9 years old,
Yeah,
something like that.
that seems right.
But in that, I saw in you. I mean, even my wife came to me and said, "That guy right there, that Josh Hersey kid, you see something in him?" I said, "I do. I see a calling on his life. I see God can use him." And of course, if I ever mention that to anybody, says, "That kid's a brat." I mean, I'm not being mean to you.
He's
but
trouble. Yeah.
He pulls the ears off for kids whenever we do the pull an ear next to you. He would pull the ear off the kid next to you, the little songs we would do and the little activities. And I said, "I don't care what y'all say. The kid's got a call on his life." And I began to just see that. And every opportunity that I had, I tried to put into you that, to encourage you.
Yes, sir.
And so anyway, that's how that began. And with children's church, that led into adult ministry. The last service we did was at a church in town. I don't know, no need to mention names, but anyway, we had a kids crusade, and we had 900 kids come through the doors in 3 days. That's children's crusade.
Incredible.
And I actually, the last night of it, with tears and with a humble heart, I went to the bathroom to put on my makeup to start that night. And
Can you clarify for everybody who put on makeup? I know what that means.
we had characters every night.
Okay.
So that night was God's Army, and I had my black stuff under,
War paint.
War paint. I was an Army guy.
I love
dressed
it.
in Army.
I knew what you meant, but for the audience.
Thank you. My lipstick. But anyway, so I'm standing there in front of the mirror, getting this black stuff on me, getting ready for the service, and thinking, God, I actually thought this thought. I said, God, you're getting ready to put us on TVN. You're getting ready. This thing's crazy. 900 kids. I mean, at that time, it was only like 600 kids came. That night, it was amazing. Place packed out with kids. And when I would minister, you could hear a pin drop. I mean, it was amazing. And so I was standing in front of the mirror, and I said, God, this is amazing. I know I'm getting ready to go on TBN. This is awesome. You're fixing to take this thing national. It's going to go worldwide. And in my heart, I heard, this is the last night. Oh, wow. How can this be the last night? This is great. This is awesome.
All this momentum.
We've gone. Anyway. And he said, this is the end. I got something different for you. Not better, but different for you. I said, I broke down. I started crying there. And
I can imagine.
And then I had to go out and do the service, knowing this was our last service that I would do. So I went to the pastor after that service, and I said, Pastor, God's called me to go into adult ministry. I knew that's what it was. And he said, can you do one more service, maybe 2 more services? I'd have to find somebody to take your place. I said, sure. The next Sunday, when I got up to preach, you could not only hear, you couldn't even hear a bomb go off. The kids were crazy. They were climbing the walls, and it's like the anointing had lifted. And God had said, I've told you that was the last time. And so I went back to Pastor, and I said, Pastor, we just can't go no further. The anointing is lifted. I know that we need to move on from here. And we had a good parting, a real good parting. And that's how, from that point, we started doing the Bible studies more often at the house. And next thing you know, it led into
So launching our church.
The launching, not knowing that was happening.
Right.
Because when I started the Bible studies, I didn't know we were launching a church. I thought we were launching a Bible study. Mm-hmm. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we'll fast forward in some time a little bit, that I was, and I'll share a little story as well, because now this is when, back then in the children's church days, I was a tyrant for sure. That was a very challenging and trying time in my life for a lot of reasons. I was a kid that didn't know how to process some things, and that were happening around me. And so fast forward, I have this radical encounter with God. Now, we are in 2 separate churches, you and I, at this point.
You were at the church that I was just speaking of.
Correct. I went to school there. So I was there 8 days a week till dark 30. There was always a thing, and so I was on the setup team as a kid. I actually got paid after school. I would clean toilets and sweep hallways, and I had a little side job at the school, and I was there all the time. I felt like I lived there, and it was good for me. Honestly, those years were really, really good. I thank God. People often ask me, where'd you go to seminary? I'm like, well, I went to this great private school for 10 years. Most people do it in 4 or 5. It took 10 for Josh.
Right.
Anyway, as a student and youth group, I have this radical encounter with the Lord that really transforms my life forever. This is when, and some of our church have heard me tell this story, and I'll make it as fast as I can. I'm just really, really bored one night, sitting in my room, more bored than I can ever remember being ever in my life, to this day. And as a good Christian boy, I know that I should have my devotional time, and I should pray, and I should read my Bible and all these things. And so, but I didn't want to do that. I was like 13, but I was so bored that I was like, okay, I'll just do it. And I really did it out of a sense of more like obligation, like I should, so I will. And this is when I opened up my Bible to James, which is probably my favorite. I think it's my favorite book in the Bible because of this story. I just start reading James because I liked it, and I get to James 4:7, and we talked about that verse in our last conversation. New King James is how I have it memorized. Therefore, submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Well, God, this is the first time I had seen revelation. I saw more than just the words. I was like, man, I was an athlete and a competitor, and I saw resist the devil and he will flee. And I saw winning and losing. I'm like, I like to win. I want to beat the enemy. But what I saw was order, and the thing that came before winning was this submission. So for me, it was like, well, practice and then play kind of thing. This is when, and I say it as a joke, mean it with all my heart, God tricked me into ministry. Because I think if God would have spoken to me in some way and said, hey, I'm going to have you preach, I would have been like, not a chance. I'm out. But in my excitement, I called my youth pastor on a landline, on a phone that was attached to the wall. And I'm excited about this thing. And I start talking to him about it. And again, to the point, he's like, why don't you share this with the youth group next week? So I do. I didn't think anything of it. I just shared some things. But my older sister comes up to me afterwards, and she's like, because people were real nice, like, good job, man, that was good. Okay, thanks. I'm thinking nothing of it. I was really accustomed to criticism, especially in my life. So compliments, okay. But when my older sister came up to me and she's like, bro, like, that was incredible. I was like, well, if anybody would tell me the truth, Jamie would tell me the truth. We were really close. We've always been close. I'm like, she would not just be nice. She would be honest. And so when she said it, it just made me think differently. Okay, get to the point. As you know, my grandfather, my mom's dad, is a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
Not the one who had the tractor parked here.
Right.
The other one.
Right.
He was at associate pastor at a small church, and he was like, hey, why don't you just come and talk? Say what to us what you said to them. So I do, out of obedience. Like, how are you going to say no to grandpa? So I do it. And this is when, boom, God just puts me into ministry. But you,
don't blame me.
You of all the people, and only God can do the things that he did. As far as people inviting me to come and speak, and I mean, gosh, I was speaking at youth groups and little churches on Sunday mornings, and I was being invited to MC events and all this stuff. And God, it was the first time in my life that I had experienced God was real for me. I knew this relationship with the Lord, and I was eating up Scripture and diving into God's Word. I'm 42. I'm not over it. I mean, just like your salvation story, it changed my whole life. But you were the most engaged into my life at that point, and the development of the gifting to communicate. You gave me more opportunities than anybody. You did things, and maybe we'll get into some of that, but you did things that no one else would do. You'd put me on the spot in some places, I think on purpose, and I would love for you to kind of talk a little bit about that maybe. But yeah, I guess that is my story. That is how eventually God would call me to be a part of Church on the Rock. And if we have time, I'll share that story. But let's stay there when I'm not a part of Church on the Rock yet, but there's this kid that's friends with your boys. God is using him. And then again, I think to me, it's crazy. You would just hand me a microphone and say, hey, why don't you just talk about the Bible to these adults? Can you just unpack a little bit of what you saw? Because I wasn't the only one. Your son, Derek, was the drummer, and he was a kid, a teenager.
Before he was a teenager.
Even before.
Yeah.
Jeremy Dowler picks up these instruments, and incredible musician, and he's leading in worship. And so you can expand certainly bigger than just me, but here we are, these kids, and you're quite literally giving us platform opportunities that I am curious, what were you seeing? What made you do it? It feels crazy to me.
Well, I guess what didn't make me do it, but led me to do it was like I said, I saw in you early in life a calling.
I didn't know that, by the way, till today, that you saw it then.
Oh, yeah, back when you were in our Amos days.
I did not know that then.
Here comes Amos. But anyway, I saw it, but of course it wasn't ready to be developed. I mean, it was something. And then of course, you hung around our kids all the time. You hung around Derek and Danny a lot. And so I'm not going to be super spiritual and say, God told me to do that. I just felt like I was on a Sunday afternoon, I called you, and I said, tonight you're preaching. I just felt like that was pushing you to a place that you weren't ready to go to yet.
Yeah.
In your mind.
Correct.
But in your spirit, God was leading and directing you to be that.
Yes, sir.
But I wanted to make sure that I was pushing you into it, I hate to say pushing you, but leading you into that.
Yes.
And so by calling you on that Sunday afternoon and saying, you're preaching tonight, I felt like that was challenging you to get into your word that afternoon. And you did. You came up with a great little message that night. It was awesome. It was a good message. Good altar call, good everything. I'm being honest as I can be. I never once premeditated anything. Mm-hmm. I'm just not that organized. Okay. I'm not. I see things happening and I move into those things. Mm-hmm. And I've always been that way.
Yeah.
If you said this afternoon we're going to repaint this, I'm ready to go repaint it. I don't have to think about that. I don't have to go into start planning the colors. I go over and do the colors and all that kind of stuff. I'm just ready to go at the moment that God says go.
Yeah.
And that's how I've always. So I didn't never premeditate leading you into the ministry. I just knew that if I did this, he would go here, and then God would do this. And then I never really dreamed that you would be the pastor.
Yeah, that makes two of us. Yeah.
The day, do we go into that for a minute, how that happened?
Yeah.
Okay. What happened on that was we had come to some sort of a plateau in my ministry. I just felt like that God was telling me that I needed to step back and let a new generation, which we had put a lot into, take over. And I said, well, God, who would I talk to about taking the church over? And he said, I want you to talk to Derek, my son, Derek, and I want you to talk to Josh Hersey. And I want you to set those two down in your office, and I want you to tell them, and if you remember this correctly, I said, one of you is going to be the pastor. One of you is going to be the associate. I'm turning the church over to you. Go pray and come back to him and tell me which is what. And Derek came back to me and said, Dad, I do not want to be a pastor. I don't want to be a pastor. Please don't ever call me pastor. Of course, now people call him Pastor Derek because he does have that calling on his life. Yeah. So it came back, and y'all came back and told me, it's you. I said, all right, here we go. Yeah. And it wasn't long after that I just handed it over.
Yes.
And with Jeremy Dollar, the same thing. He went to Oregon to Bible school, or school out in Oregon. We would fly him in back to St. Augustine to put him on the platform to lead worship for service and fly him back up there because I wanted to put more into him. I knew he was to be a worship leader and not to be a school teacher or what he was to be a worship leader. So that's how that to me, that was how I was putting into the next generation.
Yes.
By being faithful and teaching, leading, guiding, and maybe sometimes pushing.
I think so. And I've often said of you that your leadership style and mine are very different.
They are.
But the way that you were with us was so good because and this is what I've said of you, Pastor Tom was the type of leader that if you could get around him and you could pull it out of the air, is what I call it. Like if you could just be around him and you had an aptitude, like a desire to learn, and you were willing to grab things, you could learn so much. Because I'm watching the clock. We could talk the amount of stories that we could tell, and maybe we do some bonus conversations for the podcast or something. Things like you talking about that. Hey, Josh, can you preach tonight? And I'm a prepare guy. I like to think and pray and prepare and feel very detailed and organized. I am organized, but you sort of throwing me into the deep end like that did create a sense of urgency to trust the move of the Spirit, not my own. So whether you knew this is what you were doing or not, I'm learning to follow the Spirit in a moment versus follow my preparation process. Right. Now, I'm just a kid. I'm not thinking about it like that. Right. But in hindsight, it's like, man, that was really good. You mentioned, I don't remember if it was in this conversation or our last one. I think it was this one. You even mentioned after a message, an altar call. Well, a quick story on that is I came to... And I still, at this point, am not a part of Church on the Rock. And again, if we have time, I'll tell how God did that. But I would often stay the night with the Outleys on Saturdays on purpose. I loved Church on the Rock. So I was like, hey, if I stay on a Saturday, I get to go to church with them on Sunday. And then, whose parent, Mom, can I go stay at my buddy's house so I go to church tomorrow? Who's saying no to that, right? So my parents were like, heck yeah, go. So this particular Sunday morning, we have this response at the end of your message where I encountered the physical and tangible presence of God on me in a very real and very powerful way. And that afternoon, we're just at your house. I'm sure the Jags game was on. Miss Nancy cooked. I don't know how y'all fed all us boys. I don't know how you kept the lights on with the amount of food that we would eat.
I don't either.
And we're having lunch, and I am just talking to you about this experience that I had that morning. And you're just going, And I don't remember any of the questions, but you would often ask me these questions. You were searching for something always in those questions. And I would just answer, and okay. And I think you were reading, like, what is the Spirit doing in him right now? So we go, back then we had church Wednesday night, Sunday morning, Sunday night, I think we had a prayer meeting like on a Tuesday.
Ministry, Tuesday night prayer
Yep,
meeting.
all that stuff, and I was there for as much as I could be. So we start the service on that Sunday night, and I'm just there, and you say, "Hey, before we haven't sang a single worship song. Hey, before we start anything today," and you start talking about our lunch. And you're like, "Josh, would you just come up and share with the church what you shared with me?" I'm like, goodness, okay. And so take the microphone, and same thing. I just say to them what I said to you. And then, I don't know if you remember this. You say, "Hey, listen, if we're just going to start with responding to the Lord, and if you just would like to experience, maybe God will touch you tonight like he touched Josh this morning. If you'd like to receive a touch from the Lord, why don't you just come to the front?" And I'm like, "This is great. Woo." And then you lean over to me and you're like, in my ear, and you're like, "All right." I mean, a whole line of people are up there, and you're like, "All right, you're going to go to that side. You start praying for those people. I'm going to go to this side. I'll start praying for those people, and I'll just meet you in the middle." And then you just left. Like, there is no conversation happening. And what do? I'm just like, how do you say no? I'm like, okay. And so I do. Up to that point, and I had been preaching a good bit in my little young life by then. Up to that point, I would never lead toward a like any kind of responding. I would just close in prayer, in Jesus' name, amen, and hand it over to whoever was in charge. I was terrified of that until that night.
Right.
And you just threw me into the deep end, and I think the result, the Spirit was doing a thing. These are the things that you would do, the things that you would do that were so meaningful and powerful. And so, for the sake of time, let's round the corner a little bit, because we are, as a church, and never once as a church have we ever forgotten about the next generation or thought like they don't matter. But in this discipleship journey, there is no question. We knew there was a staffing deficiency for our student ministry, and we needed to hire there. But we wanted to create we felt very led by God to create an intentional focus on the next generation. And I think that too oftentimes, regardless of the era or the age, it is easy, and I will put myself into this category, it's easy for people as we age up to look back and start to discredit the generations behind us, because maybe they didn't have to earn it the way we earned it, or we had it harder. And the whole, like, you walk to school up hills both ways in the snow barefooted thing.
In Florida.
Right. And we rode there in our mom's sedans, that whole thing, and we're weaker and blah, blah. And I think that many people, not holistically, but many people can fall into a mindset that the younger people, they just don't get it. They don't have it. What would you say to that? Because I feel like you've never thought that way. I feel like you've always elevated the generations behind you. What would you say to people that might fall into a trap of thinking that the generations behind them are going to mess it up, or they don't have what they need, or et cetera?
They're believing a lie.
Okay.
Because it's not true. When you look into the generation that's coming up now, even, I don't agree with all the things they do, tattoos and pink hairs and all, whatever it is.
Sure.
I don't agree with all that stuff, but God's using those kids. He's using that next generation. He's causing there to be a revival in our nation. Even with the Charlie Kirk's assassination, you can see what all the people that were never even would go to church, never even experienced. Like Elon Musk was at that memorial service. He never been, as far as we know, never been, and he was touched by God. Yeah. But I'm saying, God's using this next generation. We need to just get behind them and love on them and maybe lead and guide them into them. But the thing I tell you, us older folks, the adults, is more is caught than taught. Yes, they'll watch your actions more than they'll listen to your words. We can stand there and point the finger all day long, but when they see you, like you said, you saw me in my real life outside of the pulpit. Yes, sir. Whenever the car would pull out in front of me, or the kids would act up, you saw me. Or when the Jags lost, they messed up. You saw my reaction to that, and that's just who I was. But the kids they will catch more than you teach them. You got to teach them. You got to give them the words. You got to give them the teaching from the Word. But they watch you. every step you take. And how did you learn to speak English? Your mom and daddy spoke English.
Correct.
How did you learn to walk? Your mom and daddy walked.
Yeah.
You followed those examples of those people that are in front of you. Even at times when you didn't want to follow those people, you did anyway because they were your leaders. So more is caught than taught. Lead them by as much by words as by lifestyle. Don't say one thing and do another thing.
Yes, sir.
It's easy to fall away and say, well, I had a right. That guy cut me off in traffic, and there was times I would slip.
Sure,
and my wife
we're all
would say,
imperfect. Yeah,
my wife would say, "Get him, Pastor."
That's good.
Say, shut up.
That's
Get him, Pastor. So, but more is caught than taught, and lead these. We need to put into this next generation. Ignore their stuff that we don't agree with. When we were growing up, we did things that our parents didn't agree with.
Sure.
When they were growing up, they did things. But that's not the problem. The problem is, or the solution is to just lead, guide, and direct them with actions.
Yes, sir.
Don't say go to church and not go to church. Don't say love the Lord
good.
and not love the Lord. Don't say study the Bible and not study the Bible. Don't say pray and not pray. They need to see, they need to hear, they need to watch. And when they see, hear, and watch, they'll take action.
That is so true and so real for me from the examples around my life. And this is one thing I've bragged all the time about, is that I tell people I didn't grow up around religious people. I grew up around godly people.
Christians.
I really did. And when I say religious, I'm talking about the people that they do it if they are attending church, it is just to have attended. It's like a box check thing versus a lifestyle they're living. And I saw, and I'll keep it specific to you because this would be true of my mom. This would be true or my parents, I should say, my grandfather, other members of our family, my grandmother, one of the great Bible teachers to children of all time. She even wrote a book, actually.
Oh, wow.
Little children's book. But so I'll keep it specific to you, that I have had the privilege, and I think that God allowed me to have this privilege with intention, because he knew from the beginning of time that he was going to call me to step into the leadership of our church. And I know things that, inside things about times that you've been wronged, times that things have been said of you that I knew because of my proximity. It's like, what are they talking about? That's not true. But there would be this belief, there would be a group that would buy into a narrative of Pastor Tom or of Church on the Rock or whatever it could be that is not accurate. And I could think of some specifics, but not that I'm going to say those. But here's what I recall. There were times that if you would, let's just say, hypothetically, would have stood in front of the church and said, hey, let me tell you what's really going on, blah, 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 ABC. For all these people that have this narrative, they would have been like, oh, like we're the idiots, right? That's what I think would have happened. But for you to win the approval of that people group, you would have had to betray the trust of maybe one individual or a couple or a family. And I watched you so many times humbly fall on the sword and just continue to lead, continue to preach. I've watched you be godly in the midst of real pain. I can see I'm getting emotional because I see your emotions stirring right now. And what I had the privilege to be a part of and to witness at a very, very, I was like a son in your house in a lot of ways, was to watch a godly man do what you just said. I never heard you talk about people, and even people that were treating you poorly, never heard you talk about them poorly. Watch you stay faithful to God's call on your life. Even to the point that you handed the leadership of Church on the Rock over to me was one of the most humble things I've ever been able to be a part of. And what I mean when I say that is I think you and I both would agree that if there's a recipe for how to transition leadership of the church, we wouldn't write our recipe and say, y'all should do this one. We didn't know what we didn't know, and we probably made some mistakes in transition and all that kind of stuff. However, our hearts were right before the Lord, yours and mine. I think we were being obedient to God and his timing. But even in that, you have done such an amazing job. Again, it's credit to you and your character and who you are. It speaks and still teaches me of once you gave, for lack of a better term, like gave the leadership to me, you let me lead. And even though you're front row, and even though you sit on our board, I will always call you pastor until you take your last breath. You will be one of the pastors. You are like the tip of the spear, the pastor of my life. It's because of this. But even in that, you humbly said his voice is the leading voice. You wouldn't let people come to you to short circuit my leadership, or you wouldn't trump any of my decisions or any of that stuff. You would pull me aside, ask me questions. You would give me counsel. You would offer your advice and suggestions. But that was always stuff that you've done in one-on-one conversations. And I think my point in all these words is to say that we are two generations, you're a generation ahead of me, like a father to me in so many ways, and it is the example. I saw it lived out in your everyday life, and I think the greatest teaching moments for me was when I saw you living godly in those. It's one thing when the church was just doing awesome. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And people were coming, and the praise team was so good, and the preaching was good, and God was moving. That was one thing, and that was good. But when I watched you just be godly and humble, protect people at your expense, and the expense of people around you, I was like, that's a man of God. And it taught me, I think it readied me I think it's why I did not want to be a pastor. I think it's why I ran from ministry for so many years, because I looked inside and went, I know the cost. Let me see if I can go be successful somewhere else, and God made it pretty clear that.
I had a pastor tell me in the beginnings, when I was having these hopes and desires to have a church, whatever. And I heard him preach a word, and he said, if you feel like you want to be a pastor and you can sleep at night and not be a pastor, then you're not to be a pastor. But if it keeps you up all night, and it did me, then you're being called. And so, yeah.
I totally agree, because I have said many times, people ask, I'm sure they do you too, advice toward ministry, if they feel called maybe into vocational ministry. We are all in ministry, but vocational ministry, I have said many times, if you can do anything else and be fulfilled, do it.
Do it.
If you can't,
then that's the calling.
You're probably called.
That's exactly right.
Okay. All right. We went a little bit longer this conversation than the last one. I think that you hit it the best, because the question was, how can people see what's in the next generation? And you basically just said, just live it, and say it and live it, and lead them. I think in closing, I just want to say thank you. Maybe we'll do some additional conversations, because we never got into the story of how I even came to Church on the Rock. That was a God thing, for sure. Exactly. Very much you were a part of it. Anyway, the whole thing. Maybe we'll do some bonus conversations and get into that a little bit. But I want to say, as we wrap up these 2 Sundays that we've been able to do this together, thank you. And when I say thank you, I certainly mean it for myself and my family, but I say it as an extension of the entire church family. Thank you for being you, for being obedient. I think you embody Psalm 143:10. You allowed God to teach you his will. Because he's your God, he is the Lord of your life. You have lived that in the entirety of my knowing you. You let the Spirit of God lead you forward on a firm footing. I think that all of us stand on your shoulders. And I know that you're humble, and it's an all shucks thing, but without your obedience to the Lord, without the scars and the stories, the wins, the losses, and all of that, none of us are here. And so it's been an honor and a joy to be able to have these conversations and through the screen and the power of technology expose a little bit more of you to our church. So that
Can I add one more thing?
I would love it. Sure.
Last Sunday, or Sunday before last, Nadia was on the keyboard. Is it last Sunday?
Yes.
Okay.
So at the time of this recording, it would have been just days ago.
Oh, yeah, weeks ago. She was on, whenever it was. I looked up there and I saw Nadia. I saw you,
Which is your granddaughter.
my grandbaby.
Mhm.
Owen on the platform, Jeremy on the platform. I looked up there and I was in tears with joy.
Yeah.
I looked at Nadia. She probably felt uncomfortable because I just kept smiling at her. So I was like, God, you did this.
This is good. I'm glad that you shared that because there is generations, and
Your kids.
my kids, we serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So again, truly, not just from me, but on behalf of us all, thank you for you responding to God's will for you, because it has transformed the lives of us all.
And I'm the one that benefited.
I
Because
think
I get to see Nadia on the keyboard,
Amen.
Owen, and I get to see these things. I'm the one that benefited.
Amen.
Even
So
though
good.
I'm not being selfish with that benefit, but I'm benefiting so much from this.
It's beautiful.
It's absolutely amazing. Thank
love
you,
it.
brother. I love you.
Love you too. Church, I hope you enjoyed these conversations. I know this conversation went a little bit longer than last week, but I felt like the extra time was certainly worth it. Once again, I just want to lead us into the preparation for a response. As the praise team is making their way forward and as our service host is getting ready to come up, I always want to make sure that you know that Jesus loves you. And so if you're here today, you've never made a decision to surrender your heart to his lordship, we want to give you the opportunity to do that right now. We are, Pastor Tom and I, just two lives that are examples of the transforming power of Jesus, taking him from the fighter that he used to be and me from the chaotic kid that I used to be into just sons of the King. And you have that opportunity as well because of Jesus. And so our host is going to talk to you a little bit more about that and give you the opportunity, if you would like to step out of death and into life like God has done for us. And so I love you. I appreciate you listening to these conversations. Let's get ready to respond.